artists and youth development initiatives globally, and we have the privilege of presenting Baheshta today for her first virtual solo exhibition. Baheshta is a fourth-year architecture student attending the University of Virginia, and she is originally from Afghanistan. So we are just so delighted to be able to present her today to you all, and thank you all so much for coming. Baheshta?
Here we go. I'm very excited. Thanks very much, Joyce and Lindsay, for giving me this opportunity. This is actually my first solo exhibition, so I'm very honored. Thanks again. My name is Baheshta. Being originally from Afghanistan, I've lived and traveled to multiple countries throughout my lifetime. And my everyday life has so many different aspects. Every day I live as a Muslim, I live as a woman, I live as an Afghan, I live as an architect, and at the end of the day, I live as an artist, which I think ties everything together. In my work, you will see a lot of emotions that are not only inspired by my personal life, but also by watching and feeling others experience them. And today I will exhibit a mix of 2D and 3D work. You'll see different mediums such as watercolor and graphite, but you'll also see some sculptures and models made of clay, plaster, rockite, melting soap, and even bronze. In most of my work today, you will see in order, showing the transformation of one style to another. And regarding the title, most of them have their own title, but some are inspired by some kind of quote by myself or by other known people like Rumi, Maya Angelou. So I might talk about some of them more than others. And if you have any questions, you can just ask me at the end. Back in 2018, I was asked to represent myself in the form of an art piece, and I drew this. The first thing you would see or notice is my deep emotions for poor kids, them being excluded from the all the happiness and joy at a very, very young age always breaks my heart. And then you also see a book, an object with triangular forms and a sphere. Each has its unique personal meaning to me. When we returned to our home after 14 years of war to Kabul, Afghanistan, this is how my dad or all of us found our house. And this is where he started rebuilding it. I started a journey of 100 days of making with Professor Sanda Iliescu and with some other peers. This is one of the initial pieces where I started abstractly exploring compositional forms using watercolor. The point was to express my emotions at that very moment of the day for 100 days. And the pieces coming immediately after these slides will be a continuation of this journey. So slowly I learned how to give meaning to colors and shapes by just composing them. And it was around this time last year when the pandemic began. Since I have been away from my family since 2015, the lockdown did not impact me as much as it did other people around me. And I noticed a sense of sadness and loss among others. So I attempted to represent or respond to that situation by our shared feeling of loneliness and sadness. So these pieces were all done while the pandemic started, and people were so stressed and everything about like the whole situation. And then during that time, as it is very normal nowadays in Kabul, Afghanistan, a horrific terror attack occurred in Kabul city and killed so many people that I don't even recall the numbers because the numbers were very high. So just as a reminder or dedication for them, for the people who lost their lives in that attack and also many other attacks that have happened, I painted this. And just a reminder that all these slides that I have been showing you guys so far are all part of my 100 days journey. Being inspired by Rumi, an Afghan poet and dervish who concentrated all his energy on spiritual development, I shifted from a completely abstract form to a figurative form. While being an important person, he was always dressed up with humbleness and modesty. He's also known by his Rumi spin or dervish whirling, which is a kind of meditation practice performed with a worship ceremony. The right hand is directed to the sky, and the left hand, upon which the spinner's eyes are fastened, is turned towards the earth, meaning that the spinner takes God's beneficence with the right hand and transfers it to others with the left hand. And during this time, I thought about transforming more figurative and somewhat realistic forms into simple shapes and still continue with abstraction. And I was curious to see what takes these simple forms to become meaningful and convey emotions just by representing different colors. And this was one of the last pieces of my 100 days journey. But it stuck with me so much that I couldn't get away with it. And I was so attached to it. And I kept making drawings or paintings, not necessarily every day, but at least once in every 2 days or 2-3 times per week. And I was always surprised to find out how each one of the audiences looked at these forms from a very different perspective. So for instance, if you look at this painting, you might see something very abstract, but if you look at it closely, you can recognize the form of the nose, the mouth, the eye, and the inner part of our head, which where we keep our ideas. You can recognize that by like very bright colors. And I was asked by a dear friend last year who is here today to draw something in honor of our frontline fighters, our doctors, nurses. And I painted this piece. For this piece, I was inspired by Maya Angelou's quote, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And I always think about how can we say things through art without actually writing it. Like, how can we show courage into a drawing? How can we show emotions into a drawing? So I just wanted to see if I could be successful doing this with this piece. I think just past one. Yeah, and then when the incident happened with George Floyd, which was heartbreaking for me, it also made me realize how we as human beings ignore so many other violences that have still been happening worldwide. This was the first one that I painted, and you'll see a bunch of kids, different skin colors, begging for food or money to survive. And as you know, the color purple is for richness and royalty. This other piece is about violence against women around the world that's happening today everywhere. It was just to dedicate for them. And then another deadly attack happened in Kabul like 6-7 months ago, or even longer than that. So this time I wanted to create a scene with just abstract forms. So you can see the demolished buildings around, a person on the ground, and the explosion and the smoke. This is one of my latest pieces. I think this is the time we all need a lot of love. So I just wanted to give that message of spreading love around. And finally, this watercolor was for a competition. Actually, I did recently, a couple of weeks ago. It was for a competition called Represent UVA Student through UVA Woman. And I received an email on Friday. I think I'm shortlisted or something, but they weren't very clear in their email. So this represents the current situation of UVA students, where they're loaded up with a lot of studies and they're dealing with a lot of difficult situations. They're also stuck behind their computers, looking at Zoom every day, and they're hardly holding up. And this specifically talks about the architecture school and architecture students. And here are some beautiful sculptures that I made with Professor Bennett, who's here today, and I'm so glad to see him. Yeah, so this sculpture represents the two different emotional states of human being, which we all are very master to hide. This one, the left one. So I just wanted to show that in a form of an egg having two faces, or a head having two faces. This is a plaster sculpture. It's positioned in prostration, emphasizing on modesty, divinity, and humbleness. And then this bronze amulet is dedicated to my mom. It was supposed to be an amulet for someone who needed a miracle. So we haven't been living together for so long now, and I just thought about having something for her, holding hands, just like giving that vibe of like being together and staying together. And just a few Brockite models I made for my architecture classes. I did not include a lot of architecture work here because that will be like a whole other kind of presentation, but just a few samples of my study of solid and void for a project. And this is soap, melting soap that I added food color. This is actually a current project I'm working on with Professor Bennett. It's going to become a life-size sculpture soon, having a dimension of 5 by 8 feet. The idea is to frame different moments of the landscape. It's going to be installed on Kluge Roost side at Pantops, Charlottesville, and will be up for 6 months. There will be a lot of other beautiful sculptures in the same path on the site. So if you are around Charlottesville in the next couple of months, it's going to be installed at the end of April. So please go ahead and visit this and a lot of other beautiful sculptures. And I'm just going to end by saying that all my work is an attempt to lift up the vulnerable individuals of society and change lives. My architecture work is doing this practically, which I didn't represent here, but that's the whole idea. Thank you very much for listening and watching. And you can just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions. I can just go back to my slides.
Thank you so much, Baheshta, for presenting your artwork, and it's just really incredible to see what you've been doing, and it's also really cool to see that you have architecture work too, so there's even more work that you didn't present, but thank you so much. And now we're going to go into the Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also type your questions in the chat, and Lindsay will be reading the questions for us. So.
I have a question. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about what it was like to create an art piece every day for 100 days, and if you had any difficulty sticking with that schedule, and or were you able to like follow through every single day?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think it really matters if you have passion for something. I know there were days that were very difficult for me because it was stressful with a lot of other work that I needed to do. But one thing is important that we all deal with our emotions every day. So this was a way for me to just take it out. And it was same as talking to someone about something and just feeling light after doing so. So instead of doing that, I just created an art of peace every day. And it was also interesting to go back to them and look at them and see how you felt that moment, how you can control it in the future, or what caused that emotion, and how like people around us can make us feel different. It was a great experience, to be honest. But yeah, I would agree that it was stressful sometimes, doing a lot of other things.
Thanks. And I just want to say you couldn't have chose a more interesting time to do 100 days for documentation.
Exactly. It was actually, I was lucky, I would say, because I had started my journey and then the pandemic started like in the mid semester, I would say. So there were like multiple phases that I was going through, uh, which made it even more interesting.
Baheshta, there's a question in the chat. How can I purchase art from you?
I unfortunately I cannot sell the original ones, but I can make prints. And so this is my Instagram page. I will put up something soon to let you know how you can purchase, or Joyce, we can talk and then let them know.
I was curious if you could talk about the experience of processing your emotions through these pieces. Like, do you feel like afterward you understood better, and did you create them with only yourself understanding or expression in mind, or did you have people in mind that you wanted to communicate them to?
Yeah, that's a great point. I did mention it at the beginning of my presentation that everything you see in my artwork, it's all derived from my own emotions, but also uh, looking at others. Like sometimes you feel things for other people, you feel their pain, their struggle, and you want to do something, but you can't. So to me, that's how I thought about like helping them. I couldn't do it like in the real world, but like I tried in my head, in my imagination. But yeah, a lot of other people were involved as well. So it wasn't just me and myself.
Baheshta, everything looks amazing.
Thank you. Good to see you, Joey.
Do you have a favorite?
My favorite, I would say this is of course because it says my reflection. But then I think all of them are my favorite. Yeah, this one as well. I just love how the colors transition. These dead colors or the background, and then the lighter colors and brighter colors are like inside the mind.
Awesome.
Baheshta John, this was excellent presentation. You know how I'm amazed with your artwork. And it amazed me how you come with these ideas and putting these colors together and expressing your emotion as well as the different situation that not back home we go through in Afghanistan, but as well in this country as well. So I have a question. When are you going to start teaching us some artwork? Come up with that. So because I'm really interested, as I have a little bit background in painting and drawing, but I want to, learn some of the techniques that you're using currently.
Well, maybe we can talk about that personally.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
Thank
it
you
was
so
excellent.
much.
Great job.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, I'm just like, it's just a start point for me, and I have to like learn a lot of other techniques, a lot of other mediums. I really wanted to like switch to acrylic or oil painting, but watercolor has like so stuck with me. I think there's a lot of flexibility with watercolor that I'm not even getting any chance to like move on and experience or experiment a new medium, but I would love to.
Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to add something. Well done for the exhibition and the presentation.
Thank you.
Amazing. I was actually going to say that with your the watercolors, I actually think it's really good to continue with watercolors because in some ways I think they kind of help with the visual language in terms of storytelling. So like as you're using the watercolors, it's like you're almost like writing about the experiences that you're thinking about. Do you get what I mean? But you're doing it in a visual way. So yeah, I'm encouraged by your watercolors, and I would say continue, even though I want to like expand with acrylics, and that's good as well. But I just think it has strength, particularly the one that you've got on the screen right now. And it also made me think of mosaics in a sense. Like piecing together thoughts and ideas and stuff. So I think it's really strong, basically.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gail. And also, one thing that I realized how even these, for example, this one, the heart, how these tiny spaces in the way you shape that can create a depth. So there's a lot of things that I'm learning as well.
Yeah, exactly. It does make it almost seem as if it is 3D, even though it's 2D. It's, you can tell that it's a yes, but with the way you've painted it, it kind of comes alive in a sense. So yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Thanks, Gail.
Baheshta, there's another question in the chat from Joy. Are you going to 100 more days?
That would be awesome. Yes. Yes, definitely. Next time I might go 500 days. Yes, so right now I am working on my thesis, and it's my last semester, so it's been very stressful. But yes, that's the goal, definitely. And I would encourage everyone else to, I mean, not necessarily like drawing something, but doing some kind of expression, maybe through writing or something to do for like a certain number of days. That would be a great experience.
I was actually going to ask you, well, my original question was like, how have you seen your architecture work and your artwork kind of related? Is your thesis at all like related to what you've shown here? Like, are you able to bring in elements of the watercolor paintings that you've done or the graphite pieces that you've done, like into your architecture work?
I haven't done that so far, but that is also the goal by the end of this semester. I haven't actually started because my thesis is on transformation of prisons in the United States, and it requires a lot of research, which I'm still doing. But I would love to translate some of these drawings or make a relationship between my artwork and my thesis project. It'd be a great idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was really curious because I can definitely relate to what you do on both. Yeah, and then there's another question in the chat from William Bennett. What are you going to do after graduation in the short term and long term?
I really want to work for a non-profit organization, whether it's in the arts field or architecture, for people who actually care about others, who actually attempt to change lives. And even in the long term, I want to have my own nonprofit organization, definitely dedicated for poor kids, because I think that's one of the only ways we can lift up the society in general, by giving education and care to the very young generation. And I'm thinking about starting from Afghanistan, my own country, and then expanding to how far, I mean, to the world. And yeah, that's whatever I'm doing so far. I know some people are like, oh, I had a dream to become an architect or an artist, to do this and that. But my dream has always been to help people. I just chose art and architecture to do that.
I have a question. Thank you, Baheshta, for sharing. So when you do your watercolor pieces, like how do you start and like what is the process? Could you maybe go more in depth with them? Because I
Yes.
love the watercolor pieces especially.
Exactly. So that's interesting, because even throughout the day when I made these drawings, there was that specific moment that something just popped up in my head. And then I was like, oh, I want to take this inspiration and want to draw it. And as you could see in some of these, this was when I was like, I saw something, I saw a video or something about poor kids. So I was like, to make something for them. Or the explosions, for example, or COVID related things. Yeah, so all these, just like it was that specific moment, a video, was a scene or something that triggered me. And I was like, you need to make an art piece for this. So that's how it actually starts. And that's the reason why I have quotes for most of these drawings, not titles, because a lot of times I have my topic or my code first, and then I make my drawing based on that, like kind of a translation. And then there are many techniques. Normally when I start is with a flat wash. So as you can see at the top here, just a flat wash of like a mix of different colors, just to give like a slightly a background to my drawing. And then I just continue with other techniques of watercolor, just painting them. And one important thing is that I never think too much while I draw. I just let the watercolor like do its own thing, and then just like fix things later on.
There are a couple questions in the chat from Joy. When do you graduate, and how long does each piece take approximately to make?
I graduate in May this year, 2021. Exciting, but also terrifying. But for these drawings, I would say not more than 1 to 1.5 hours, because I had to make them quickly. But it also depends on the page of, the size of the page or sheet I'm using. These are bigger, so these are bigger, they take longer. But yeah, not more than 3 hours, the most.
Could you talk about your use of color and repeated themes in these works? Because a lot of them look similar, and I'm curious what your impression of those elements are.
Yeah, definitely. Use of color is one of the challenging things. So for example, when I want to create something that's very emotional and kind of sad, I try to mix it with the white color. I have one pure color, and then I try adding or mixing it with some other dead colors to get different variations of that. So this is one of them. But then there are times that I'm like, I want to go for like different bright colors no matter what, just to show like happiness and all that. So I just like randomly pick very happy colors. And then sometimes they're picked purposely, as I said, purple for like richness and royalty. And then the color of their skin, which this argues, for example, against racism. No matter what, we're all humans, different, we're all like pieces of one another with just different skin colors. But then there are times that I want to emphasize onto one thing, and I try to make the background fade away, and then make a contrast, for example, between one color and the other. So yeah, it has a huge role on showing or finishing my piece, the colors. I imagine if this heart was black or the background was black.
So I did notice you don't use a lot of black in your watercolors, although your initial drawing, that your self-portrait, is in charcoal or at least graphite.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever painted in monochrome, or do you just like the colors too much to go back?
Yeah, I mean, this might sound biased, but if I just want to use black and white, then why would I even use watercolor? I'll just go with charcoal or or graphite. But because the black color is very strong. It's even using a little bit of it is like very strong. You can see here, it's very bold. So it's just, I think, as a starting artist, I just want to be careful with like showing that too much.
Yeah, the ones with the like really intense colors, like I feel the depth of emotion, like the figure, like the two down in the slides where there's the figure out in the background. Yeah, like you feel the depth more intensely, I think, in these, like where you have like the darker color. Just the focus, like the eyes focus just is caught by it.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone have any final questions for Baheshta? Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming today. Baheshta, maybe you can go back to the last slide again for your Instagram handle. And yeah, we thank you all so much for coming. Baheshta, thank you so much for presenting your work and telling us your story. And we're really excited. So next week we will also be having another solo exhibition featuring Gail, who's on the call right now, and she's from London. And every week, for every Saturday for the next several weeks until July 3rd, when we have our Global Creative Summit online, we'll be having solo exhibitions. And then we'll also be having a group exhibition with Baheshta and Gail and others, and Lindsay, who's on the call too, on May 1st. So we are really excited for this year for I Am Art House and the different events that we are having to showcase these incredible emerging artists. So if you would like to stay updated, you can also follow us on I Am Art House for Instagram. You can visit our website, iamarthouse.org. And yeah, so thank you so much, Baheshta. Thank you everyone once again, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone.